When you play the Game of Thrones, you
subscribe and like,
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello YouTube and welcome back to the Grease Comms YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be a very special video. It's going to be my 1,000 subscriber YouTube special. And this video I thought was very fitting because the way I got into this content, if you guys did not know, was I started doing Winds of Winter predictions. I started doing them for all the characters. So this video is going to be for one, a thank you to you guys that support me on this channel, and I kind of celebrate this channel almost its 1 year as well. And then the other part's going to be going through all of these characters that you have want me to talk about, all the major characters, the plots going into Winds of Winter. I have about a Google Doc of about 2 pages worth of characters I want to talk about in this video, so this is going to be a long one. I'm also going to say for new viewers, consider subscribing for more of this type of content. And I'm going to leave a timestamp down for people that just want to hop into the video, because there is going to be a section at the beginning of this video that's going to be kind of talking as a thank you to you guys and also future channel information. So it's also going to be a kind of an update video at the beginning here. But yeah, if you do want to just skip this little intro part and get straight into the Winds of Winter stuff, there will be a timestamp in the comments, and then I'll also probably put something on the screen where that's the time when I start talking about the stuff in the video. But yeah. So starting with a major thank you, I want to say thank you guys for all the continued support for the months that this channel has been up. I've been posting Song of Ice and Fire stuff for I think about 6 or 7 months, I guess, at this point. I want to say thank you guys for always supporting me on this channel. The kind words I'm always given on here, it truly makes my day waking up, or maybe I'm doing something and I just see a comment that pops up that says love your content, or something along the lines, or anything supportive like that. I really do appreciate that, guys. Like, seriously. I also want to say thank you for supporting me when it comes to other things outside of it, where maybe it's not videos, but it's like I had a breakup about a couple months ago during this channel, and a lot of you guys were really supportive about that, so I want to thank you guys for that as well. And I wanted to say another thing while we're on this subject, that this channel genuinely has helped me through a lot of mental health issues. For a lot of people that are going to watch this video, you guys will have no idea, but I've done YouTube for almost 2 years at this point. I had another channel that was more gaming focused, which is why you saw kind of the gaming sprinkled into some of the videos a few months into the channel being like existing and all that. And I just genuinely was not happy with what the content I was putting out and how that channel was going. So me and my friend Luke ended up making this channel, and I genuinely love making videos on this channel. I love talking about A Song of Ice and Fire. I love the whole process of making the videos, even though some of them can be tedious, like thumbnails. Don't get me started, I hate thumbnails. But, you know, I'm getting better at them. But I want to say thank you guys for always, supporting me on that front as well, because just having something to keep your mind at ease and a goal you're working towards has really helped me through a lot of things in my life. It's gotten me to a much better and happier place in my life. So it's something I wanted to talk about in this video. Because what's funny enough with this video is that around the same time I'm hitting 1,000 subscribers for this channel, which has been a major goal for me for the past year or two, I've also hit my weight goal, which is 165 pounds. It's gonna be different if you're not in the US, because we're weird and use pounds or whatever. But so that, yeah, I've been really in a good place in that part of it. So I wanted to say a major thank you to everyone that's watching this video, everyone that's taking the time to watch my videos, and all of that. I just wanted to give you guys a massive shout out at the beginning of this video. Now, besides that, I wanted to talk about a couple of things on the future of the channel. So there are a couple of major things I want to talk about. First of all, I was given the idea, and at about when we did a 500 subscribers special, someone had wanted me to do a Discord for the channel, and I actually have done that. So that will always from now on be in the link. It'll be a link in the description, or it'll be a link in the kind of banner area on the homepage of the YouTube. It'll be there as well if you guys ever want to join that, or it's a permanent link, so you guys can join that whenever you want. Mainly, that's going to be, just if you guys want to interact with each other talking about theories, if you guys want to message me, or I have a specific section in the Discord for video ideas that you guys want me to do. And also, that's a way better way if you guys want me to do a video, to get your video seen because instead of having to kind of go through YouTube comments, like when I'm looking for video ideas, I can just go to this Discord, which will have your guys' what you guys think would be good video ideas and all that. So as well as YouTube hides YouTube comments sometimes. Like I'll go into videos, you know, a week old or something. I'll see comments that never showed up for me. So that is a great way of interacting with me. And also just if you're trying to recommend ideas, if you're trying to get in, you know, to build up a community, if you want to talk to other people about theories of your own, that's going to be a great place to do that. So I decided to put that link in the description of all the videos and in the banner. Now next, there's two things. So the Twitter, I've had a Twitter and an Instagram for the channel, but I've just been very inactive and I haven't really promoted them much on the channel because I wasn't really ready, I feel like, to promote those yet. I wanted to get to where we had a solid community on YouTube to where I felt it made sense to start doing those. But there will be an Instagram and a Twitter on the channel. Again, both of those are great ways of getting in contact with me, specifically Instagram. I won't say as much on Twitter. I've never been someone that uses Twitter much. But I did want to make one for the channel because I used to kind of use it more or less as like a community section on YouTube. But I will try to start, if that one can garner a little bit of following, I will start to kind of move things over to there. But Instagram is going to be the big one. If you guys want to contact me, DM me, whatever. I'm going to be trying to actually be very consistent on Instagram as well, like doing a post on there, you know, either updating the channel, just my personal life if you guys want to see what's going on with me. And all that. So again, those will be in the description and in the banner as well, in the logo, in like the, you know, main homepage for the channel. Those will be there as well. All right, so the next thing on the kind of updating of the channel, I am going to start a Patreon. Now this is going to be for more, if you want more content. I'm going to be doing 4 Song of Ice and Fire videos on the channel a week now. And then I'm going to try, when things to slow down, I'm going to try to do 1 Lord of the Rings video on the weekends. I kind of stopped that for a little bit. I got a little bit busy. But if you do want to be part of this Patreon, this is going to give you, there's a bunch of tiers here. You guys can read through them while they're on the screen. But basically, you're going to have updates on here. This will be, you know, chat community. You're going to get a shout out in every video. I'm going to have like a page at the end for new Patreons or all that stuff. And then also, no matter what tier you're on in this, again, you don't have to support this at all. This is for extra stuff that you guys want. If you guys want to support me financially, this is a way of doing it. Again, you don't need to do this. You don't have to do this. This is just an extra thing if you want more content from me. And again, all of you watching this video, supporting me, subscribing, liking, all commenting, all that stuff is already great enough. This is for more people that want, I guess, more benefits. So the difference from the $3 to the $9, you're going to get early access in the top 2 tiers. So you'll get all of my YouTube videos at 6 p.m. U.S. Central Time instead of 7. So you'll get them an hour early. Also, the VIP one. Now, this is a big one. So I'm going to test this one. But if you want to do this, you will do, it's a $25 per month. You can specifically request me to do a video and I will do the video. Right, as long as, like, we'll talk about it, but as long as it's not something crazy that just, you know, it's like, I have to say this is a Song of Ice and Fire or Lord of the Rings kind of only video. I'm not going to do random stuff. Like, this is a purely, like, say you want to do a character one, so you want me to talk about Euron. You would do this fan request, you would just do Euron, I want to do Euron Greyjoy. That's what you would do. And then I would do a video for you that month, and that's kind of how that would work. If you stayed in that tier for all 12 months of the year, you would get a video that you wanted to see every single month. So that is kind of this. If you wanted to do this, this link will be in the description as well. It will also be in the banner. This is just an extra way to, I guess, get more content from me if you would like. And any money that goes from this will be kind of put back into the channel, whether that's getting a new microphone, whether that's getting art done for the channel, making things look more professional. Any money that goes from this will go back into the channel, if that makes sense. So that's a lot of the things I wanted to talk about before we got into the actual Winds of Winter predictions video. So thank you guys all for sticking with me on that, and I hope you guys all enjoy the video. This one took me a lot of time. I'm actually recording this about probably 2 weeks earlier than when it's actually going to come out. So I hope you guys have been enjoying all the content, and let's get into the video. All right, so getting into the actual video, we are going to talk about the North first. Now, we're going to go from the North all the way down to the kind of the southern areas of Westeros, and then we're going to go ahead and head over to Essos with a lot of the Dany plot. So that's kind of how I'm going to do this video. We're going to go from the top to the bottom, and then we'll go across the seas, and we'll go to Essos. So that's kind of the format of the video. But we're going to talk about Stannis first, because I think the entire northern plot early on in Winds of Winter is going to kind of revolve around what happens with Stannis and Winterfell. So Stannis, for me, is in actually a pretty good position. Like I've talked about a lot, I think Stannis is going to win at least the first Battle of Ice. So we have a Frey force and a Manderly force that's sent out from Winterfell by Roose Bolton, because there's just a lot of infighting going on right now in Winterfell. And it's probably better if they just send these armies out and they do all that. Now, the scouts that the Boltons are going to be sending out, the Freys are going to be sending out, are probably going to be saying that they are at this town with this beacon. So the big thing to note here is that this is a snowstorm going on right now, more or less. It's very difficult to see. You have the Freys, who are Southerners. They don't really know the land too well. And then Stannis, in the POV chapters with Asha, we've also learned that they have been putting holes into the lake near the town for fish. And we even get someone that notes that it's a shock that the whole lake, like frozen lake, hasn't collapsed on itself because of the amount of holes that have been put into it. Like, they've been fishing so much in this, there really are no fish left in this lake. They've pretty much fished it dry at this point. So the big question is going to be, what's going to happen here? Now, we've gotten a lot of inclination that Stannis is going to either put this light out of the beacon, right? Because he's had this beacon on the tower lit the entire time. Right, so I think what he does is he ends up turning this off right before the Freys or Mannerlys attack, and starts lighting a fire on the lake. So what ends up happening is the Freys, they're going to be probably the first force that comes in. They go to this light or whatever, thinking it's Stannis' camp, and they are basically all going to drown and fall into the lake. The Manderlys, I believe, regardless of how this goes, they're going to switch sides at this point. I think, again, you're sending them out with the Freys. It's a great time for them to be able to stab the Freys in the back and get the vengeance that they deserve or want. So what I think ends up happening with that situation is Stannis now has gained more men and given a big blow to to Roose Bolton and Ramsey, that I believe what's going to happen secondly is going to be interesting now. Because the thing is, the Karstarks had a plot where they were actually double agents for Roose Bolton. Now, because the banker from the Iron Bank meets up with Stannis, he brings the message that Jon told him that, hey, the Karstarks are going to betray you. So Stannis kind of deals with that and now is holding them hostage. It's a really great parallel to Robb in Book 3, I believe, where he is given the option, should he kill Lord Karstark or should he keep him prisoner? And he does not keep him prisoner, and it loses him the Karstark force. Stannis, smartly, does the complete opposite. So now he basically has the Karstarks for ransom, or not for ransom, but as prisoners, and he is basically saying, okay, Karstark forces, if you want your lords to not be harmed, you're going to fight for me, and once this is all over, they'll be returned or whatever. So that's kind of the plan there. Now, what I think Stannis could do, and why I think the pink letter makes sense from Ramsay's point of view, is, I guess we'll talk about the pink letter in this video a little bit when we go to Jon's kind of thing going on, but it makes sense if we say that we have Stannis dresses up a bunch of his men in the Frey clothing of the people that are dead. He dresses them all up like Freys. He has the Mannerly force there. They come back and they say, oh, Stannis is dead, and they bring his magic sword with him, or with them as proof. Then the Frey force, which is actually the Baratheon force at this point, alongside of the Manderlys, once the gates are opened, maybe they do a Trojan horse thing where they wait till kind of night and then they, do all their things, they open the gates, and Stannis' forces take the castle. It would make sense from the idea of Ramsay that Stannis would be dead in this situation, and all of that. So that part of the pink letter would make sense when the context of why Ramsay would send that letter to Jon if it isn't actually Ramsay. Now, from this point, I'm going to jump back to some of the other plots, and then we'll meet back up with Stannis, because we do have a lot to discuss in the north going on and stuff right now. Now, at the same time, we're going to have Davos and Rickon in Skagos. Davos is trying to find Rickon, so that Wyman will end up going with Stannis and doing all that. what I think is going to end up happening is that Davos finds Rickon, and I think Rickon, he was already a wild child. He's going to be more savage. He's going to be more wild. And I do think he ends up getting Rickon off of Skagos, and maybe with a Skagos force as well. Who knows? But I think Wyman Manderly's plan is going to kind of blow up in his face, where he was like, okay, we could use maybe Wyman Manderly as the Stark power, and then we could rule, we have a rule of counselors above him. Well, Rickon is not going to be in any state to really rule. So I think what's going to end up happening is if we go back to the Jon plot. So Jon, at the end of book 5, is killed. We don't know if he's going to come back in the books. It was something in the show that they went the route of he ends up coming back. I think it's probably 95% that Jon comes back. I think what's going to happen, and I talk about this a lot, is that Jon ends up going through Ghost, or he's basically working into Ghost, and then Mel is going to do some sort of ritual or sacrifice that ends up bringing Jon back into his body, but he's going to be a little different. I think Jon will not be as maybe patient with people, or he'll kind of be a bit more angry. We'll see some of his darker side come out when he's revived. But something that I definitely could see that leads to Jon's resurrection, because again, we're always given this common theme that King's Blood and blood rituals / magic have a lot of power in this universe. So I think with George basically confirming that Shireen is going to be burned, and Stannis is not going to be there. Again, I think there's very low chance Stannis is the one to burn Shireen. I think this is going to be something that everyone hears that Stannis is dead from the pink letter and all that. And what ends up happening is Mel says, we need to sacrifice Shireen to more or less give Stannis strength or revive Stannis wherever he is, or do something along those lines. And I don't think it's going to have the effect Mel thinks it will have. I think they burn Shireen because Val is pushing forward as well. And I think, Celsie, I always struggle with saying Stannis' wife's name, but Celsie Florent, hopefully that's how you pronounce it. I think she's going to be like distraught about Stannis' death, and then also she kind of blindly follows Mel. She's the one that's really like following it, not really Stannis in the book to the show is very different on his belief of R'hllor. So I think what's going to end up happening is Shireen gets burned, and I think this magic is going to go to Jon, that Jon is revived through Ghost. So I think that's how Jon comes back. I think that's how Shireen's plot ends. I think that's kind of where Mel goes. I think Mel's an interesting one. Mel is going to be very interesting because, again, in this scenario that I'm building up to, Stannis is going to be alive. So that's going to be an interesting conversation. Now, I definitely could see Celsie Baratheon end up killing herself the way she did in the show, based upon, burning your own daughter. Apparently, Stannis is dead. If she doesn't see any effects maybe right away that Stannis is still alive or something like that, I definitely could very much see her killing herself, which would be very tragic, but I think that's how that part of it could go. Now, with this being said, Jon gets resurrected. Jon comes back. Jon's leaving the wall. I think he's going to go out with the plan he had. At this point, he's still going to believe Stannis is dead, because that is kind of what Stannis' game is right now. He wants the world to believe that he is dead. So I think Jon takes his force of wildlings, and maybe even some Night's Watchmen join him. Maybe, maybe not. I would tend to believe not really. But I think Jon takes his force of wildlings. They go south, and when they get to Winterfell, they end up realizing that Stannis has already taken the fort. I also think Mel, realizing that Jon's been resurrected, will end up going with him, similarly to how she does on the show. It would make a lot of sense, and she could kind of figure out the reason Stannis maybe died or failed going with Jon, because he's going to Winterfell. So I think that's definitely a very high possibility. And Jon himself, I think, might want some answers from Mel on how he came back, how he's alive, and all of that stuff. And I think it's another thing where Stannis realized that Mel had a lot of power. That's kind of why he used her. I think Jon will kind of do a similar type thing where he realizes Mel has some power, whether that be for good or evil, that may be of some use in the war against the others. And getting to Winterfell, So Winterfell, Stannis is going to be ruling, and then Jon's going to come up. I think we're going to have a big meeting at Winterfell early on in the first half of the book with characters like Jon, Rickon, Stannis, Mel, all these characters. And I think what's going to end up happening is Mel is going to be probably banished. Or at the very least, Stannis is not going to want her there, and Stannis may even try to kill her because she burned Stannis' daughter without any of his knowledge. So I think that is definitely going to be a big thing. It's going to be different from the show and how that all goes down. Jon, I think, will be elected the ruler of the North or Winterfell for now. Because the big thing's going to be Rickon is the rightful ruler, but I think kind of similar to how Ned was supposed to rule over Joffrey, I think it would make a lot of sense if Jon was the one to rule over. I think at this point, that is kind of how it's going to be established. I think we'll get a little bit more information as I'm going to talk about a bunch of other things and how they're going to collide on Winterfell later in the book. I think there are going to be two big meetings at Winterfell, and then I think at the end of the book, we're going to see the others come over. But let's talk about Bran. So Bran, Mira, Jojen, Hodor, all that stuff going on north of the wall, with Cold Hands, Bloodraven, all that stuff. I personally believe Jojen is dead. I think Jojen was used for paste to kind of awaken Bran's abilities. Some people don't agree with that theory, but I'm going to go off of what I believe. So I think Jojen's dead. I think more or less what the show did for what is going to happen north of the wall with Bran is really what's going to happen. I think the others eventually are going to be able to break into Bloodraven's cave. And I think what ends up happening is Bran is basically going to take on the consciousness of Bloodraven and all these other characters that have had the sight in the past. So I think Bran very much is going to be a different character. He is not going to be really Bran anymore. And this is why I personally believe once Bran becomes kind of the three-eyed raven or the crow, I do not think we're going to get Bran chapters anymore. Because the problem with it is Littlefinger is not giving POV chapters because he knows too much and he has a lot of plotting going on that would ruin other things going on. I think Bran is going to know too much. That would be big reveals. Bran can kind of see the future maybe and stuff like that. So I personally think this will be Bran's last POV book, but I think Bran is going to serve a much bigger role in Winds of Winter in kind of learning how to defeat the others and then relaying that information once he gets back to Winterfell, probably more in the second half of the book, to Jon. Now, what I think is going to be the big reveal of book 6 is going to be who are Jon's parents and Jon being the legitimate heir to the throne and being king of the North because Robb gave him that crown. Because I think what we're going to see by the end of the book is Howland Reed, along with Mage Mormont and Galbert Glover, along with possibly Sam. I don't know about Sam, because Sam is quite a distance away. I don't know if he's going to be there, but I think Sam will be on his way back, probably, up north, trying to figure out some information and doing all that. And I also believe that we're going to see Bran come back, and Bran will also know of who Jon really is. So I think we're going to see a combination of Jon becoming the legitimate ruler of the North, right? Because of Robb naming him that. And two, we're going to find out, I think, who his real parents are through Bran and Howland together by the end of the book. And I believe that that is going to be Rhaegar and Lyanna. That could also be Ned and Ashara. Doesn't really matter. Either way, by the end of the book, I think we will find out Jon's true parentage. And that kind of leads us to our main part of this northern plot for Winds of Winter. I also want to talk about Wyman Manderly as well. I think Wyman Manderly is going to be a really big character when it comes to helping Rickon or Jon rule. I think Wyman Manderly is going to be one of the key components to the ruling of the North, and he's going to be a major advisor character. Similar to how we saw Davos was in the show, I think that's what kind of a role Wyman Manderly could take on. And I think Wyman Manderly will, for the most part, survive this book unless he stays behind. Because I do think the others will attack in this book, and I think, at the very least, what ends up happening is that the others come over, and I think they somehow get through the wall. One way or another, I think it's going to be through the Horn of Winter that Sam possesses in Old Town, and that Euron is going to blow that, letting the others come through. And I think the last part of Winds of Winter is going to be they can't hold the others. They're not united. The whole country is not united. So Stannis tries to hold them, and he holds the force, and I think a lot of the forces of the North retreat to the Neck. That is kind of how I see the book ending for book 6. And I'm trying to just go through some of my characters here. I think Jane Poole, I don't know how big of a role she's going to play. I think she's just going to be kind of used to show that the Boltons were lying, this isn't Arya, that Arya's still alive, and all that. I don't think she has a major role in this one, but that's kind of how I see it. I think Alice Karstark being married to Then and Jon like kind of helping her will gain this Karstarks much more into Jon's favor again and all of that. So that's another thing I wanted to talk about in this one. Ramsey and Roost, they are going to die in this book for sure. There's no way they escape this book. I just don't see how it's possible to have a final kind of book, A Dream of Spring, and Ramsey and Roost still being in power in the North. Or maybe they retreat to the Dreadfort. But I still think they are going to die in this book. They, to me, have to. It just makes narrative sense to me. Unless George really wants to get dark with it and he just has everyone dying that's on the good side, more or less, and then the others just come by and steamroll everyone. That's possible. Mance is another very interesting one. Because Stannis is going to end up taking Winterfell. And if Mance is not killed by Ramsey or Roose, will Stannis? Because Mel has not only deceived Stannis, but everyone else. So I think Mance is going to die as well. I think if Mance is still in Winterfell by the time Stannis takes it, I think Stannis is going to behead Mance. Because Stannis wanted Mance to die anyway. So I think it makes more narrative sense for Mance to die to Stannis, I guess for the second time almost, in this book. So I don't think he's going to have a huge role outside of that. Dustin Barberry, I guess it's another good character to talk about. She's an interesting one as well, because I do think she will be one of the ones that either bends the knee, or she's going to be somebody that just doesn't care and just sticks with the Boltons till the end, and then she's also killed. I don't think she's going to be a major power. She openly kind of went against the Stark family and Stannis as a whole, so she's going to be stripped of a lot of power regardless. So that's something I did want to talk about as well in this video, just kind of looking at my character lists and just trying to get through them as well. As we talked about with the Bran camp, I think Jojen is dead. Mira, on the other hand, I think she's going to make it back to the Wall, and I think she is going to be a character that just kind of sticks around Bran, and Howland as well coming to Winterfell. I just think she's going to be a character that kind of sticks around and possibly dies during the War of the Others. I'm not sure on that one. Like I've talked about with Howland Reed, another character I thought I'd bring up as well in this one, I believe Howland is going to be someone that comes up and will be part of the story by the end of the book at the very least, and will be someone that helps shine a light on what was going on in Robert's Rebellion and giving us more information on who Jon's parents are and other important events happening during that time and all of that. So that is going to be the Northern plot and all of the things I wanted to talk about in this video about the North. Getting into the next part, we're going to be talking about all of the Riverlands plots going on and everything going on in that area of the map. Alright, so getting into the next section of the video, we have the Riverlands. We're going to start with a couple of the characters that I think are going to be in the introduction of Winds of Winter, and that's going to be the whole party going west. So Edmure, Jane Westerling, and kind of the whole Westerling family as a whole. What do I think is going to happen with them? I think Edmure is a very interesting character because I think the Blackfish is going to be involved in trying to get him out of captivity. As we know, Edmure helped the Blackfish escape so that he was not, imprisoned by Jaime and all that stuff. So in this situation, I think what's going to end up happening is the Blackfish, along with maybe some rebel forces. This could be with Stoneheart. This could not be with Stoneheart. I'm not sure just yet. But I think Edmure is going to be freed. Now, Jane and the Westerling family as a whole, they're more interesting because we know that Jane's mother had actually betrayed Robb and was kind of undermining the entire northern or the King of the North plot. by making sure Jane never got pregnant. So the interesting thing is going to be, how does the rest of the party get treated besides Edmure and probably Jane? Because again, we know Jane is innocent during this. So I think what's going to end up happening is Edmure gets freed, and then I think Edmure is going to go into hiding. I personally don't see any way Edmure kind of just comes out. I think Edmure will come back into prominence after we see something like a Revenge Red Wedding, which I think is going to happen with another character we're going to talk about, since we're on the topic already, is going to be Lady Stoneheart, and I think she is going to end up infiltrating this wedding, because we know there's going to be a wedding between the Freys and Lannisters, and I think that Lady Stoneheart is going to get into this wedding. He's going to be in control of Jaime. I think she'll be able to sneak at least a couple men into it, and we'll have a Revenge Red Wedding on Walder Frey and eliminate majority of the Freys. Kind of like what we saw on the show with Arya, but I think that's just going to be played out book version in a different way. Another thing I want to talk about is the Blackfish. I think the Blackfish is going to be an interesting character when it comes to the whole idea that he is, I think, going to be assisting Lady Stoneheart until he kind of realizes this isn't really Catelyn anymore. So I think that's going to be a big idea as well. I think the Blackfish, I would like to think he survives the book, but I'm not completely sure. He could be somebody that meets up with Jon later on in the book, as he would be someone as well that would know of kind of Jon's parentage, or not Jon's parentage, but Jon being kind of the ruler of the North. And I think something that we're going to talk about with Lady Stoneheart, and something that we're going to get a lot more into when we get to Arya, when we go across the seas and we get more into this video, is I believe Arya is going to kill Lady Stoneheart. We've already heard that Arya kind of gives her name Mercy in a Winds of Winter sample chapter, and I think she is going to end up giving the mother's mercy to her mother. I think it's very fitting. I think Arya is going to see what her mother has become, and I think that's going to be a major turning point for Arya, where Arya has kind of come into this character of very much vengeance and a prominence of just like being a killer and wanting revenge. And I think she's going to see how her mother turned out, and that will kind of make her revert a little bit alongside of maybe someone like the Hound re-entering the entire thing. So Jaime and Brienne are two more characters that we need to talk about when it comes to Lady Stoneheart. I think there is a 0% chance Jaime or Brienne die with the Lady Stoneheart plot. It's just not fitting for either character, in my opinion. I think Brienne is eventually going to meet up with Arya, because I think Arya is going to be coming into the Riverlands a bit, and she's going to meet up with Arya. And I think Brienne's more or less duty is going to go north. I think Arya, when she comes back, she's going to want to go north to see Jon. So I think a lot of what Brienne kind of does past the Revenge Red Wedding 2.0 and Lady Stoneheart being killed, and when she is freed, I think she will end up going north. I think she is going to try and help the remnants of the Stark house. And I believe Jaime, after being freed from all this, because again, I don't think he's going to be killed, I think he will end up being freed. I think Jaime's a hard one to predict, because I think he will end up going back to King's Landing, and I think he's going to see what Cersei has become even more after, you know, being imprisoned and all that stuff. And I think Jaime will be the one to kill Cersei. I very much believe in the prophecy that, you know, Cersei is going to be killed by a younger brother, and that younger brother is not Tyrion, it's Jaime. So I think Jaime being the one to kill Cersei makes sense. We're told all the time that they're going to leave this world together. It makes a lot of sense. Hopefully it's not by bricks. D&D, I don't know what you're thinking on that one. And I think that's where Jaime's going to go. But either way, even if Jaime does kill Cersei, I think he will end up dying as well, whether that's by Aegon, whether that's by maybe he decides to end his own life, anything along those lines. I think Jaime is a character that may not survive this book, depending on how quickly the Aegon plot moves and how quickly they look to take King's Landing. I think will depend on if Jaime dies in this book, and I definitely think it's probably a 50-50 shot he dies in the next book. Talking about the Hound. Now, I've made a video about the Hound a long time ago, actually, but the Hound is still alive. He is definitely the gravedigger that we see in Brienne's plotline in Feast. He is definitely alive, right? All the signs are there. But the question is going to be, what is the Hound's role in the greater world? I think maybe something comes about where I think the show did a really good job of how they brought the Hound back into the story, where, you know, some people attack, where the Hound is kind of taking his therapy type thing, and the Hound gets drugged back into the war. I don't think it's going to be anything like the Mountain versus the Hound in King's Landing or anything like that. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think we're going to see Clegane Bowl in that regard anyway. I genuinely don't think we're going to see Clegane Bowl in the books. It made a lot more sense in the show just based upon where characters were and kind of who they were as characters, but I don't think that's going to happen in the books, sadly. I think it would be really cool, but I don't think it's going to happen. The Hound, to me, is another character kind of like Brienne, where I could see the Hound being a character that looks to try and atone for his sins. Not Brienne, not like in that way, but I think Brienne's gonna end up going north. I think the Hound will also end up going to the northern side of Westeros and trying to fight the others. I'm not sure where he would team up with, or he just a solo venture. I think he could be very possible. He is another character that kind of meets up with Arya, and those two kind of just go on up to, you know, the north, try and help out. Because the Hound doesn't have much going for him as terms of family, in terms of people he knows. So if something was to happen where the Hound currently is in the story, whether that be with Brothers Without Banners attacking them, or Lannister forces attacking them, or Freys, whatever, it doesn't really matter. The point is, if that gets the Hound out of there and he kind of goes back a little bit into the Hound, I could definitely see him traveling with Arya and trying to help against the others towards the end of the book. Another character I've already talked about is going to be Walder Frey. I think he is doomed in the Revenge Red Wedding. So I think he is doomed. I don't want to talk too much about him because, again, this is going to be a really long video. So trying to speed through some of these characters that I think don't have major roles in the story, where they're just going to be killed, because it just makes sense. Because George needs a lot of Westeros to be united at some point of the book, and characters like Walder Frey and Roose Bolton and Ramsay Bolton, they just can't be alive. And whether that's one way or another, whether that's with Stannis killing Ramsay and Roose, whether that's Jon, either way, those characters have to die. Nymeria and the Wolf Pack. Now, this is a big one as well when we talk about the Riverlands. I think they are going to play a huge role when it comes to the fight with the others. I think that is going to be a big thing for them. I think we will see Nymeria and Arya at least interact once when she comes back to Westeros. I've been talking about Arya a lot because I think she's going to be heavily involved in the Riverlands in the next book. But I will tell you, we'll talk about more about Arya, about how she's going to leave the Faceless Men and all that stuff later on in this video. But it's something I want to talk about, is the Wolf Pack is going to be a very significant player against the others, and I think they definitely will be used. But I'm not really sure how much else outside of that they're going to be involved in. But yeah, I did want to mention them inside this video. Last character I want to talk about that is in the Riverlands at the moment is going to be Gendry. So what is what is his role going to be? Now, I think with the show, they went a lot different of a route. Gendry ends up being like a very much more prominent person in the last season, being kind of legitimized as a Baratheon. I think that is all going to go to Edric Storm. I think Gendry is going to have much more of a limited role, because I think Gendry is going to be the warrior type, where he could definitely be a leading figure in that regard, where he's kind of helping to lead men, maybe once he's figured out that he is actually, a Baratheon bastard. But I think the other bastard, Edric Storm of Robert Baratheon, is going to be much more important. So I'm going to kind of just gloss over Gendry, because I don't think he's going to have a huge role. I don't think he's going to have a huge role outside of maybe he has a nice little cameo meeting up with Arya. Very common theme for the Riverlands. A lot of characters probably going to meet up with Arya at some point. But I think for me, Edric Storm is the one that is really the bigger player, and the one that's going to come into a lot more prominence in the next book. Now, the next part of this video is going to be focused on what's going on in the Vale and getting into King's Landing, so let's get into that. To start out this section of the video, we're going to have to talk about Littlefinger's plan with Sansa. Now, I've already made a video on this already, but Littlefinger's plan that he tells Sansa doesn't really make sense when you look at the context of Littlefinger, right? If we look at Littlefinger right now, all of his power in the Vale is tied to Robert Arryn. So if Robert Arryn was to die, Littlefinger loses all of his power. So the idea that Littlefinger is just going to give up his most valuable prize right now in Sansa, and he's going to quote unquote, make Robert Arryn die when Robert Arryn is where all of Littlefinger's source of power is coming from in the Vale right now, doesn't make a lot of sense. And also another thing I want to talk about with Littlefinger's plan is George very much never tells us directly what is going to happen in the story. Him telling us a plan basically means the plan is not going to happen. So what I think is way more likely is that Littlefinger is not going to do this plan, that he's actually tricking Sansa and kind of playing with Sansa a little bit. Now, where I think this is going to go is that I believe that in one way or another, Sansa is going to figure out the game he is kind of playing. I think Sansa's going to realize that Littlefinger's been lying to her about her, plan, or about his plan of marrying her to Harry the Heir. I don't think that's going to happen. And I think Robert Arryn is just as likely could die as Harry the Heir in the next book. So I think there's a lot more going on in the Vale than the straightforward what Littlefinger tells Sansa. It just doesn't make a lot of sense for me. So I have a couple routes that I think Sansa could go. One route would be that Sansa ends up going to the Riverlands, trying to restore the Tully name and all of that, and trying to help out in the Riverlands once she is revealed as Sansa Stark. Because, again, she will have been related to Lysa, and she's a very prominent figure right now, right? And a lot of the lords in the Vale believe that they should have gone into the war on the side of Robb. So it is interesting the way that I think Sansa will use that sentiment once Littlefinger's probably gone to either one, she could try and look to make an alliance, or Littlefinger could look to make an alliance with Aegon, which again is a really good one and it makes a lot of sense for Sansa, but I don't think Sansa wants to marry at this point. I don't think she's really down for that unless she needs to, like a Harry the Heir type situation. If she has the power of the Vale behind her without having really to marry, I think it's very likely she actually would not marry. Now, I think Sansa, a lot of Winds of Winter is going to be her focusing on overcoming Littlefinger and getting Littlefinger out of the story. There is actually 0% chance, in my opinion, that Littlefinger makes it to the last book. We just cannot have, and this is my problem, is a lot of the villains in this story need to be weeded out. A lot of the villains, a lot of the characters that we know are not good have to be gone by the end of this book. And Littlefinger is no different because he just creates chaos. He creates too many problems, and and George specifically needs to get all of these characters into one area to fight the White Walkers. And Littlefinger goes against all of that. So I think this book is really going to build towards Sansa continually growing and playing the game, and eventually she's going to figure out what Littlefinger has been doing and how he's kind of playing with her, and she is even a pawn in that way as well. So I think this is the book that Littlefinger ends up biting the dust. Now, there was a character that I was recommended to do that I actually hadn't known that much about until I kind of did a little bit of a research for on this video, but Sir Shadrich, I guess is how you say his name. He was a knight that had been on the wrong side. He was with Stannis, and he kind of lost a lot from that. And when this reward goes up from Varus to get Sansa back, and kind of his position would be, back to the way it was, he kind of goes and looks out for Sansa. Now, Brienne runs into him, and Brienne thinks he's following her. He's not. And he ends up being one of the swords for Littlefinger, and he is in the sample chapter for Sansa dancing with her and being introduced. So the question is going to be, is Sir Shadrich, could he be someone that looks to try and kidnap Sansa and bring her to Varys? I think we could see a character like this being someone that ends up trying it. I don't think he's going to have a major role in the next book. He's only mentioned a few times, but he is someone that is very interesting that could end up betraying Littlefinger. Maybe he plays under the pretext of he's going to help Sansa, and then, he was going to, end up, kidnapping her after they took out Littlefinger. Maybe he could be someone more loyal to Sansa, because we do see him trying to get pretty close with Sansa. But I think, for me personally, I don't think he's going to be a huge player. I just think he could be someone that could either support Sansa or be someone working for Varys. And there's a lot of people working for Varys, as we will talk about when we get into the next section of the video. Robert Arryn, I do think Robert Arryn survives the book. Because, like I've said, for Littlefinger, Robert Arryn dying is not really a good thing, because Littlefinger would actually lose power. And then also, if Sansa was to marry off to Harry the Heir, Littlefinger has almost no power or control in the Vale in that regard. So for me, I don't see Robert Arryn dying in this book. Harry the Heir, on the other hand, though, I could definitely see dying. I could definitely see the opposite of what Littlefinger is telling Sansa actually happening. So that one I think is a little bit more likely that Harry the Heir actually does end up dying. Now, that was a pretty brief one on the Vale. This video is getting pretty long as I've kind of looked at the record time, so I'm really trying to, get through this. I don't want this video to be, 3 hours long or whatever. I want to keep it to about 2 hours, probably be the nice threshold, but getting into King's Landing, and that's going to be the next kind of section of this video. And I've talked about this plot probably more than any plots going into Winds of Winter. But the plot is going to be kind of Cersei Lannister. She's taken her walk of atonement. She's back out. Kevin Lannister's dead. Maester Pycelle's dead. What is Cersei going to think? And I think it's very obvious that Cersei is going to think that Tyrells did this. She is going to basically think Tyrion did this, cause so much chaos. I think Cersei is going to lose kind of her mind. And I think Cersei will do something like blowing up the Sept, like one of these other things, to kind of eliminate a lot of the problems right now she is going to be facing. As well as the Mountain, or Robert Strong in the books, is going to be her champion in the trial by combat she is going to have with the High Sparrow. And I think it's going to be very interesting, because I think for the most part, I don't think it matters. I think Cersei will win the trial, but I think the problem is going to be, as we talk about Aegon, is that Aegon is going to be coming over. And I think Aegon is going to kill any of the Lannisters still left at King's Landing. I think he's going to have a much larger force. And I believe because Cersei is going to be very impulsive and stupid, I think as a result, Margaery could die, whether that's when she comes to do her trial, something similar to the show. I think is very likely. And I think with how Varys could look to destroy their alliance, I think Varys could very easily look to destroy their alliance by killing Margaery, or making some chaos to make sure that Margaery ends up dying, because that would break the Tyrell alliance. If Cersei is the one kind of responsible for it, and there's no more marriageable ties to the throne, what is stopping the Tyrells from supporting someone like an Aegon to get revenge on the Lannisters? It just makes a little bit too much sense for me. But I could also see the Tyrells just kind of saying, we're not going to be in King's Landing, screw this alliance for now, and put it aside and then leave. And then, the Lannisters all alone. All of the Lannister army is in the Riverlands. Pretty wide open to take for Aegon. Now, another character I want to talk about, the High Sparrow. I think the Sparrows are going to end up dying. I think the Sparrows pose too many problems and issues for the rest of the story that they're going to have to go in this book. Whether that's from Aegon coming in and bringing in some kind of rest to the city. Because the difference is going to be Aegon's going to come in as a hero, someone that the people can get behind. And when he's doing all these things, he can say, the High Sparrow and all these people, they are abusing your religion, and they're going against a lot of the things that they're preaching, and could get rid of the High Sparrow and the Sparrows as a whole. So I think they are going to be something that has to be gone. Now, the Tyrells, they are a house I think they are going to suffer a ton in this book. I think it's very likely that most of the Tyrells are killed in this this book, whether that's by Euron, or that's by, these Tyrells going to King's Landing and Cersei killing them, or something along those lines, or a Varys intersecting. I think there are a couple Tyrells that could live, but I think out of all of the characters that are in the Tyrells, I think Olenna alongside of Willis Tyrell are the two likely ones to survive this book, because Willis, he's a cripple. I don't think he's going to be in a place of danger, really. I think Highgarden's not going to be taken like it was in the show. So I think that for me, the Tyrells are going to take a bunch of hits in this book, and I think they are going to kind of get what's been coming to them after they just never lost anything in the war. I think it's kind of time for them to face some losses, in my opinion. And that's going to lead into, I think, one of the most intriguing plots in this entire kind of book. And that's going to be what Varys is doing in King's Landing, and what Varys' plans with Aegon are going to be. All right, so let's talk about the Varys/Aegon plot. Now, to start out with, I think there's a major kind of thing going on with Varys, that he is setting up Aegon's rule to be very peaceful. Because if we look at a bunch of characters that have not been named for a while, where we haven't actually seen them, but they're talked about. Let's put it that way. So the first character I want to talk about with Varys is Edric Storm and Tyreek Lannister. I'm going to call him Tyreek Lannister because it sounds cooler, even though it's probably Tyrek Lannister, I think. But Edric Storm, at this point, we know his location, but it's also somewhere that Varys could also very easily find out. Varys has a lot of spies, especially in Essos, and I think what's going to end up happening, and what could happen, is that Edric Storm could possibly be used by Jon Kahn and Aegon to not only help take Storm's End, but also to hold Storm's End and use Edric Storm as a puppet ruler. We'll see this with Tyrek Lannister, I guess. I guess I'll say it the right way. Where I think they're going to use, or Varys is going to use Tyrek Lannister because, one, Tyrek Lannister would know of a lot of the things Cersei has done, whether that's, getting Robert killed with the wine and stuff like that, or she will also know that Robert Baratheon went to a lot of brothels and stuff like that, and will know that, Robert Baratheon's, bastards and all that stuff would have black hair, and would just be somebody that could clarify that Tommen, Myrcella, and Joffrey were actually, in fact, bastards. And a lot of people would not question this because, A, it's a Lannister telling you this. It's not someone like Stannis who has something to gain off of it. Tyrek Lannister would have almost nothing to gain off of that from the public's eye. So then I think what would end up happening is Varys would try to make Tyrek Lannister in charge of Casterly Rock, giving another one of the kingdoms to one of the puppet states for Aegon. So that's what I feel like Varys is trying to do at the moment. I think Varys is trying to get all these puppet rulers in all of these areas to make Aegon's rule a lot easier. And this even comes back when we talk about how I talked about earlier with Sir Shadrich. This could be another plan that Varys could do if he was to get in possession of Sansa. So I think that's an entire plot going on with Varys right now. Now, let's get into Aegon's camp besides that. I have a list. I'm actually skipping over quite a bit, but we'll get back to them after we do Aegon's camp, and we kind of wrap up the King's Landing plot in general. So talking about Jon Kahn. Now, Jon Kahn has grayscale, so he is in an interesting kind of predicament right now where he wants to see Aegon on the throne fairly quickly. And I think that's what's going to lead to Jon Kahn making Aegon kind of invade King's Landing, maybe a little bit before he's ready. Because for me, I did a video about young Griff, and I personally think he should wait and garner all of his forces and kind of let Cersei destroy the Tyrell alliance even further. I don't think this is going to happen. I think Jon Kahn is going to maybe wait for them to get some Dornish support, a little bit more support from a lot of the houses, and then he is going to choose to invade King's Landing. Now, I do think Jon Kahn, there is a decent predicament that he could actually start a grayscale plague. Just based upon how reckless he's kind of being with his grayscale, I do think it is something that could come back to bite him and Aegon's rule as a whole. Like I've said with young Griff, I think young Griff is getting more confident. I don't think he is going to marry Daenerys. I think that's what would be the most opportune thing for him to do, but I don't think he's going to marry Daenerys when she comes over. I think what Aegon's main point in this next book is going to be him kind of being manipulated and Arianne basically gets Aegon to marry her. And I think what's going to end up happening is Aegon takes his entire force, they take King's Landing, and by the end of the book, it's kind of Aegon setting up his rule while Daenerys comes over. Because I think A Dream of Spring is going to have to focus on the conflict with Aegon and Daenerys alongside the threat of the White Walkers. And I think that's where Aegon's kind of headed in this next book. And I think he is going to be married to Arianne, which is kind of weird because if Aegon actually is Rhaegar and Elya's child, they would actually be related, which is kind of, interesting. We see this a lot in this world, but that's just a weird kind of thing to throw up there. Septa Lamore is another interesting character we're going to talk about. So Septa Lamore I've talked about quite a bit in past videos, where I think she's actually Tyene, her mother. I think she's Tyene's mother, and it would make a lot of sense. It would be someone that could be, under Varys's kind of thumb, and someone that would be in the Dornish kind of area as kind of a spy and stuff like that. And I think Tyene also could be working for Varys as well. And I think for the majority, the reason that it makes sense is because if you look at the Tyene video that I made, I would strongly recommend going back and doing that, because I'm not going to explain the entire theory in this video. But more or less, it makes sense because Tyene would want to, knowing that young Griff is coming over and knowing that they can support young Griff, would not want to actually crown Myrcella, so therefore she would inform on Arianne's plan that she would know of because Arianne trusts her quite a bit, and then that's how Doran kind of figures out the plan and all that stuff. And that kind of makes sense as to why Tyene's mother would be with young Griff as well, because, again, she's around the age that Tyene would have been born. The age kind of makes sense. She has the birthmarks. She really, in my opinion, just cannot be Ashara Dane just because she doesn't have the eyes. She doesn't really look like Ashara, in my opinion. So I don't think this is Ashara, but I wanted to throw that out there, be kind, just to get doing this video. Arianne, I think, again, like I said, she is going to be a character that's kind of trying to marry Aegon, get into the queen role, and I think her main role within this book is going to be getting the Dornish to support young Griff, and I think she will still be alive by the end of Winds of Winter. I think she will be crowned the queen, but I think early on or at least the first half of A Dream of Spring, she will end up dying with young Griff, because I think Dany is just going to win. I don't see a way young Griff's kind of side wins this without marrying Dany, and I think young Griff is going to gain more and more confidence as the conquest kind of goes on, and I think he's going to be someone that looks at Dany as someone like, well, what did you do for me? I did this all by myself. Why do I need you? Kind of attitude, and I don't think that's going to be good for him. I think it's going to come back to bite him in the ass. Looking at a couple other characters I kind of skipped over, getting out of the Jon Kahn team. We've got Tommen and Myrcella. I've done a video on them, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago, but I think they're both going to die. I think they're just destined to die based off of Cersei's prophecy that she was given. I think both of them are just very likely to die, especially if young Griff comes over. They're both going to die in one way or another. I think Myrcella could be killed by the Sand Snakes because Myrcella is with the Sand Snakes right now, and I think they're going to be kind of companions of Myrcella. She's going to trust them to some degree. And then Tommen, I'm not sure about how Tommen dies. I think he could either die by young Griff coming in and just killing him, or something along those lines. I could definitely see. Robert Strong, or the character that I think we all believe is the Mountain, I think he's going to just die fighting, basically. I don't know. I don't think he's going to have as big of a role. I think he will be used in the trial by combat that is going to be against the Sparrows early in the first half of Winds of Winter. But I don't think he's going to play as major of a role in the books of Winds of Winter. I don't think it's going to be as big of a role as he was in the TV show. So I think he's going to end up just dying at some point during young Griff's invasion of King's Landing. Qyburn, kind of along the same lines. All of his power is kind of tied to Cersei. So if Cersei goes down, so does he. And that's kind of how I look at Qyburn. I think he's just going to be someone that's another advisor and fueling Cersei's more insanity. Somebody actually requested me to do Bronn, and I'll be honest, Bronn just doesn't have a big role in the books. He never really, he did for a little while, but he hasn't really had a role in the story for a couple books. He's kind of been just a weird kind of side plot in Cersei's POVs, But I think that's just going to kind of continue. I think we'll get him mentioned every once in a while. Maybe when Tyrion comes back, maybe we'll see Bronn kind of meet up with Tyrion or something like that. But especially for Winds of Winter, I don't see much importance being placed on Bronn. Maybe Bronn is someone that, you know, meets up with Aegon. Maybe he sees the opportune moment to flip the sides, I guess. I could definitely see Bronn doing that. Randall Tarly. Now, Randall Tarly is an interesting one. So, Randall Tarly is someone I could definitely see, because of the Tyrell alliance kind of not going the best, I could see Randall Tarly actually flipping sides. I could see him going with young Griff, and I could see him, you know, helping take over King's Landing, and then when Daenerys comes over, something similar happens, where Randall Tarly is leading young Griff's forces, and Daenerys wins, and he ends up dying. I think the way Randall Tarly went out on the show makes sense, personally. Maybe not everything surrounding it, but the way of, oh, okay, Randall Tarly loses a battle to Daenerys and then refuses to bend the knee. Something I could definitely see happening in the books, and that makes a lot of sense. Now, Paxtor Redwine, I also wanted to put him on here. I think he is going to end up dying to Euron. I just think Euron is a better and more intelligent commander, and he also has the Iron Fleet, which is, I think, the far superior fleet at this point. Getting into the High Towers. So the High Towers are very interesting, because the High Towers we have not actually seen a bunch. The High Towers are kind of the leaders of Old Town. They're a very powerful house. I would say they were a lot more powerful during the Targaryen years, especially when we look at a Dance with Dragons. They were very influential in those events, but we haven't seen much of them yet, which is, you know, quite weird. We're first, you know, going to probably see them through Sam and Gilly, and it's going to be interesting to see how they are playing a role in the war, because again, we haven't seen them much in the story, so I'm not really sure how to predict them. I just know that they're going to have more of a significant role, especially because we're visiting them. They're going to be probably under attack by Euron, so we will see them in that battle against Euron. It's hard to predict that, because I think Euron is going to get the Horn of Winter. He's going to blow it, bring down the wall. But I do think the High Towers will actually defend Old Town decently enough against Euron to where maybe he has to retreat, or they end up killing him. So I think that's an interesting, really interesting plot I'm looking forward to in Winds of Winter, how the High Towers are introduced into the story and what their big influence in the story is going to be. And that is going to kind of lead us to the last section of the video. So the last section of this video is going to be talking about everything in Essos. This is going to be, whether it's going to be with Dany's plot or Arya's plot. Those are the two main ones we're going to talk about, and all of the forces kind of surrounding those characters. All right, the last thing I want to kind of talk about before we get into the Dany and Arya plots are the Sand Snakes and Doran. I think the Dornish are kind of screwed. I think they're going to put all of their marbles on young Griff, and he's going to lose. I think Doran is going to live long enough to kind of see all this, and then I think he is eventually going to be replaced by someone. I'm not sure who yet, but I do think he's going to die. I think a lot of the Sand Snakes are going to die because they're in bad positions right now. And being in King's Landing, being, you know, eventually going to be a young Griff, I think they're in a bad situation. I think they're going to die as well. Now, talking on the actual Sand Snakes and the entire Dornish plot as a whole, we have to mention Darkstar. So Darkstar is a character I'm gonna do a video on this week. It might be up before this video, it might not. I'm not sure yet on the timing of it. But it's a video going to be talking about how I believe the main antagonist to Doran and also Arianne is going to be this Darkstar character. Now, I think Darkstar is going to be someone that can unravel all of Doran's plans. If you look at the people that were present during Arianne's plot and who are in a position to kind of talk about what actually happened there, that Arya Hota was the one that actually killed Aerys Oakheart, not that it was Darkstar himself. And I think what's going to end up happening is Darkstar more or less causes a bunch of chaos between Balon Swan and Arya Hota, and actually may sway Obara, who is, you know, going to be in this party as well, to maybe his side, because their plans really kind of match up in how they wanted to start war with the Lannisters. So I think that could be something that ends up happening. Now, I just believe that Darkstar's role really is to be a villain-type character for both Doran and Arianne. I also think it could be introducing Dawn into the story. Maybe he steals it at Starfall, but I'm not sure. I don't think Dawn has as much value as a lot of people think it is. I don't think it could have been maybe the first Lightbringer, but I'm not sure, and I don't think it's going to be the actual one, if there even is an Azor Ahai or Lightbringer type of thing going on. I had forgotten to actually mention Sam, Gilly, and Euron. I'd mentioned them a little bit in this video, but not a ton. So I want to specifically say that I think Euron is going to attack Old Town. Now, I think he's going to be successful to a degree where he actually does burn quite a bit of Old Town, and I think the major plot that's going to be coming out of this is that Sam is there, and he has, in my opinion, the Horn of Winter. I think what's going to end up happening is Euron actually finds Sam and takes the horn, and realizing its kind of power, he ends up blowing it. Euron is a character that is very familiar with very powerful horns like Dragonbinder, and this horn is always brought to a bunch of attention that Sam actually does have. Jon constantly thinks about the horn, maybe not constantly, but he thinks about the horn that he gave Sam. Sam referencing that he has it every once in a while. There's some importance put on this horn that I think will come into play with Euron. And Euron himself is a character that I believe is going to continue doing these big blood sacrifices because he is someone that kind of believes himself trying to be a god. And it's something we could see him turn into this dark and evil creature in Westeros. So that is something I wanted to mention before we actually end up going to Meereen and or Braavos. And before we leave Westeros, I'm sorry if I did not get to every character you guys wanted me to get to. There's a ton of characters in Song of Ice and Fire, and I'm trying to not make this video super long, but yeah, so I just wanted to get those characters off the list as well. So all that. And I do believe Sam and Gilly, majority of their plot will be based around Old Town. And then once Euron attacks, they blow the Horn of Winter, and Sam and Gilly end up leaving with some information maybe from the Wall after he's been there the entire book, and it's them kind of heading back up north. Now, talking about Braavos, so we have a couple characters here that I want to focus on in Braavos. So we have Arya as number one. Now, Arya is in an interesting position because I've talked about Arya quite a bit in this video, especially in the Riverlands section of the video. Arya, to me, is going to try and leave and go back to Westeros, but the problem is going to be Arya is kind of in a bad spot because she kills the wrong person, and she's going to try and end up leaving, Westeros. Or not Westeros, she's going to end up trying to leave Braavos. And we get this kind of in her Winds of Winter sample chapters. And what I think is going to end up happening is Arya is not going to be able to outrun the Faceless Men. She's not going to be able to just leave like she does in the show. It doesn't make any sense. What I think is going to happen with Arya is I think Arya actually ends up taking a mission from the Faceless Men in Westeros, and that's how she ends up being able to go back in the Faceless Men and letting her do it. Now, I think it could be something where it's a mission where Arya will not know and they'll contact her at some point, or maybe they will know, and maybe it's something where the Iron Bank pays the Faceless Men to kill Cersei because Cersei's not paying back the debt. So it would make a lot of sense in that regard. So I think that's kind of where Arya's story is heading. Now, I think Arya comes back into Westeros, and I think she's going to end up meeting up with Lady Stoneheart, or her mother. Now, I've talked about that quite a lot in this video, so I don't want to continue on about the Arya, where she's going to go. But just know Arya is going to be going around the Riverlands, and I think she's going to have a very different character change in this book. I think this is very set up to be one of Arya's best books in the way that she can change and grow as a character, and kind of see how vengeance is not always the way, and how it can drive people to be someone that they're not, like how her mother turned out to be with Lady Stoneheart. Now, I've already talked about the Iron Bank, but the Iron Bank is in quite an interesting spot, because at this moment, they're actually supporting Stannis. And Stannis even, says that even if I die, you're going to support Shireen. So the Iron Bank right now is in a very tricky situation if Stannis was to die. Who will the Iron Bank favor after Stannis? I think it is very likely the Iron Bank could go for someone like young Griff. So that definitely could be something, because they're definitely not going to go for Cersei or Tommen. They already have kind of screwed over the Iron Bank once. So I do believe that this is going to end up actually leading the Iron Bank down a path towards maybe young Griff. Because I don't think they're going to like Dany, because Dany is going to have the dragons. And I've talked about kind of the Iron Bank's past and other videos. I don't think the Iron Bank would want to support Dany in that regard. Also, the Iron Bank does have ties to things like slave trade and how that hurts the economy. So I don't think they're going to be a huge fan of Dany. The Faceless Men, what are they going to be trying to do in this video? Or not in this video, in Winds of Winter. They're interesting because we know that the Faceless Men are trying to gather information on the dragons. So it is quite possible that they could be trying to kill Daenerys' dragons. Maybe this is how Daenerys loses one of her dragons within the story, is the Faceless Men try to gain information to defeat Dany's dragons. Now, the Waif, she has a much smaller role in the books than she did the television, but I felt like it was worth mentioning. I think she's going to be a character that will kind of follow Arya into Westeros and kind of keep her in line and making sure, you know, she's not doing crazy stuff. And eventually, I think she will be the one to maybe give the mission to Arya once she's in Westeros on what she is supposed to do. So I think that is kind of where I see the Waif going, and that's or the Waff, whatever you want to say her name is. So that's kind of all the things I wanted to talk about with Arya and where her plot is going. Her plot is definitely leading back to Westeros. Now, for the final stretch of this video, we are going to be talking about everything going on with the Daenerys plot. So let's talk about Daenerys first. So Daenerys, the end of Dance with Dragons, she is kind of surrounded by the Dothraki, and she presumably is going to be taken probably to the Dosh Khaleen. Now, I think the story did a fairly decent job on what's going to happen there. I think one way or another, Dany is going to get these people to her side, and she's going to end up getting the Dothraki as well. I think that's the way it's been set up. I think it makes the most sense. I don't really have too much else to talk about with Dany on that regard. I think Dany comes back. She comes back to Meereen. She, gets rid of, helps, relieve the siege, whatever's going on. And I think she's going to end up leaving someone in control. Now, I think this could be someone like a Hizdahr. I'm not sure how heavily involved Hizdahr was in the Sons of the Harpy. I think he may have been like a puppet type character. So I think for me, I do actually think it would make sense if Daenerys just left Hizdahr to rule in her stead over Meereen, trying to fight slavery and stuff like that. And I think what has to be accomplished by the end of this book, it has to. There's no way. I feel like the next book can start and she is still in Meereen. The last chapter, I think, for Winds of Winter, or at least one of the last chapters, needs to be Daenerys leaving Meereen. She's getting on the ships and they're sailing to Westeros. I think that has to be Daenerys' ending for Winds of Winter. If it's not, and it's even we're not even left Meereen, I think we're gonna have really bad pacing issues in A Dream of Spring. I thought Daenerys, to me, has always been the hardest character to predict on timing wise. Just based upon the fact that she's been in Meereen for an entire book, and what's the after effects of that going to be. So that's kind of my Dany thing. It's pretty short and sweet because I don't think this is going to be a huge book for Dany. I think book 7 will be the really big Daenerys book. This book's really going to be about getting Dany in place to leave Meereen and Essos as a whole. Now, Tyrion, another interesting character. Right now, Tyrion is kind of with the Second Sons. He's going to be, he's in the Sellsword Company and getting them to flip sides. So Tyrion and also Jorah as well, I think are going to be safe and are going to end up being in Dany's council. I think we might as well talk about Barristan as well at this point. I am one of the few people that believes Barristan is going to live. I think Barristan lives this siege because I think if George does want to go the Mad Queen Dany route, I think keeping Barristan alive makes a lot of sense. I think keeping him alive makes way more sense now, to where you can set up him having a really impactful death in either book 7 or the end of book 6, where Dany is actually present. Now, with this being said, I think Daario is a character that definitely could die here. I think Daario is a love interest for Dany that you don't really need or want having going into the last book. I think this makes perfect sense to kill off Daario's character, and it would be impactful in the way that Daenerys kind of gave the hostages, more or less, to the Marinese, or not the Marinese, the Yunkish. So I think it could make sense on that front. And I personally believe that Daario has to die in this book, or at least, like in the show, he has to be left behind. I don't think Dany can go into Westeros with Daario at her side. Victarion, another one. I think Victarion is an interesting character because I think you can go two different ways with Victarion. Either you see something like how the TV show did with Yara and Theon, where Dany kind of promises him, you know, as an ally, if he supports her, the Iron Islands. But I don't think that's how it's going to go. I think Victarion is not the smartest individual in the world. I think he's coming here for a marriage. If he doesn't get it, he's going to use Dragonbinder in hopes that it'll kind of summon the dragon to his cause. And I don't think it's going to work. I think this very easily could go the opposite way, and another horn that is used kind of by Euron, and the dragon comes to Euron's side. I could very easily seeing that happening as well. Victarion then dying because he betrays Daenerys and all of that. And then Daenerys just takes the fleet, regardless of Victarion's thoughts on that at all, or even if he is still alive. So that's kind of how I feel about Victarion. I think you can go two different ways with that character, and I'm not sure yet on that one. I think definitely he's not going to get a marriage. I don't think Dany's going to marry Victarion, or I don't think she's really going to want to marry anyone for a while. So I just don't think that's going to happen. Let's talk about Grey Worm. Grey Worm to me has a much more minimalized role in the books than he ever did in the show. But I thought another character that was worth talking about. Grey Worm to me is just the figurehead of the army for the Unsullied. I think he is a character that could end up dying in book 7, just because of the war with the others, the war with Aegon. I'm assuming it's going to happen. But again, I think in this book, he is just going to be someone leading the armies of the Unsullied, right there with Barristan. So not a lot to talk about with Grey Worm. Let's talk about Strong Bellis. So Strong Bellis, I think his main thing's going to be A, he's a fighter. Now B, I could see him actually dying in the battle for Meereen. I could definitely see this happening. He's a character that I don't know how much more use he has in the story. Right, I think his major use still, I could see plot-wise, would be that he would be the one who was poisoned at the fighting pits. So he could use his evidence against either Hisdar or someone else, whoever did it. I personally think the Green Grace was behind the Sons of the Harpy, but again, someone did point out in that video that the Locust could have been someone else, and that is a very good thought. That could have been someone like the Shave Bait, or it could have been someone like that. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure where that's going to go. But I do believe Strong Bellis may die in this book just based upon the fighting. I think he'll definitely die in book 7 if he is still alive. Let's talk about the Shave Pate as well, because the Shave Pate's another interesting character. The Shave Pate is the one that's been prompting Barristan to go against Hisdar, that he is the one that is the Sons of the Harpy. And I see the Shave Pate's logic, but I think the Shave Pate has a lot of impulses, and I think the Shave Pate will actually kind of find that Dany is not all too happy on what he has done, because he really undermines Hisdar. And then the problem is, if Hisdar is found to be not guilty, which I think he will be found somewhat guilty. I think he'll be a puppet, and I think Hisdar will be a character that is able to kind of tell that the Green Grace might be manipulating events. So I think the Shave Pate is someone that will be kind of a ruling council for Meereen, possibly, or someone that, if Dany really does not like what he does, could be someone that ends up being imprisoned. The Green Grace I also want to talk about, because I think the Green Grace is the person, again, in charge of the Sons of the Harpy. I think we will find this out in probably the next book. I would assume maybe midway through, when the Yunkish start, that war really is kicking up, and Dany comes back. I think we'll eventually figure out that it was the Green Grace. There may be a Hisdar-type trial. Things come out, and I think that the characters like a Tyrion, I think Tyrion will be a really big person in helping figure out who the Sons of the Harpy are and who they're led by. Similarly the way he did on the show, except he had the help of Varys. I don't think that's going to happen. As we know, Varys is a young Griff supporter. I think he's going to be with young Griff. So I think Tyrion is going to be the character that's going to end up figuring out all this information once he puts it together. And then the last character we have on here is Reznak. I'm not sure what relevance Reznak has, because Reznak, he's very much, it feels like a puppet for Hisdar almost, but I feel like Hisdar is a puppet for the Green Grace. So the Resnak's another interesting character. I really have no predictions for Resnak. I'm not sure what his significance in the next book is going to be. So let me know what you guys think in the comments with Resnak. Do you guys think he's a major character in the next book? You think he's just a minor character that's going to kind of fade out, and maybe he's really only used there for evidence against Tisdar in a trial of, you know, if he was guilty or not, or if Resnak might be on trial as well. Who knows? So thank you guys again for watching this video, for supporting the channel, for 1,000 subscribers, for everything. It means a ton to me. I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. As you guys can tell probably by the clothing I wore in this video, this was recorded over multiple days, so I hope you guys enjoy it. This video hopefully will be out very close to when we actually hit the 1,000 subscriber goal, and I will see you guys all in the next video, and we're going to keep grinding to 2,000. Bye, guys.
If you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention.